The map Xochitl had sketched was a whisper on the wind, a series of jagged lines and cryptic symbols leading him on a desperate pilgrimage. His hand tightened around the makeshift spear, the sharpened branch a mockery of a weapon, but a symbol of his defiance. One last glance back at the clearing where Xochitl's hut stood, and a cold loneliness settled in his gut. He was adrift in a sea of green, a solitary island of fear in a vast ocean of uncertainty. Days bled into one another, a monotonous symphony of exhaustion and gnawing hunger. He rationed the meager provisions Xochitl had provided, the dried meat and berries a constant reminder of his dwindling lifeline. The forest, once a majestic spectacle, became a relentless enemy. Giant ferns, their fronds razor-sharp, ripped at his clothes. Thorny vines snagged his boots, threatening to trip him with every step in the treacherous undergrowth. Every rustle of leaves, every shadow stretching in the dying light, sent a jolt of terror through him. One day, the oppressive silence shattered with a sudden screech. He froze, his heart hammering against his ribs. Emerging from the dense foliage was a troop of howler monkeys, their black fur matted, their guttural roars echoing through the trees. Their leader, a hulking male with a scarred shoulder, puffed out his throat and displayed a set of razor-sharp teeth. Instinct took over. Remembering Xochitl's warning about territorial primates, Alex stood his ground, brandishing his spear and mimicking the roar, his voice a pathetic echo in the vastness of the forest. The standoff went on for what felt like an eternity. Finally, with a final ear-splitting screech, the leader swung from a vine, disappearing into the canopy, followed reluctantly by his troop. Alex slumped against a tree, adrenaline ebbing away, leaving him trembling. For the first time, he understood the true meaning of Xochitl's words about respecting the forest and its inhabitants. Another day, he came across a crystalline waterfall cascading down a moss-covered cliff face. The air shimmered with mist, creating a rainbow that arced across the lush valley below. For a moment, he was captivated by the beauty, a brief respite from the constant fear. But as he approached, a low growl sent him scrambling back. A panther, its sleek black fur blending in with the shadows, emerged from behind the waterfall, its yellow eyes fixated on him with predatory hunger. Panic surged through him. He remembered Xochitl's description of the monstrous panther guarding the Cave of Shadows, but this creature seemed smaller, younger perhaps. Was it a scout? A guardian in training? The panther stalked closer, its every muscle rippling with power. Just as Alex thought his time was up, a thunderous roar echoed through the valley. The panther froze, its head snapping towards the source of the sound. Then, with a snarl and a flash of black fur, it vanished into the undergrowth. Moments later, a much larger panther, its scars a testament to its battles, emerged from the jungle. Its gaze swept over the clearing, then turned towards Alex. But instead of attacking, it let out a low rumble, almost a warning, before melting back into the shadows. Alex stood there, legs shaking, the encounter leaving him both terrified and strangely grateful. The journey became a constant test of his resolve. He navigated treacherous ravines, their bottoms littered with the bleached bones of past travelers, a stark reminder of the forest's unforgiving nature. He crossed raging rivers using fallen logs as makeshift bridges, his heart in his throat with every precarious step. He evaded venomous snakes that slithered through the undergrowth, their forked tongues tasting the air. He dodged the swooping attacks of territorial birds with vibrant plumage and razor-sharp beaks. Days blurred into weeks, the line between reality and fever dream becoming increasingly thin. Was there even a cave? Was this just some elaborate hallucination brought on by fear and hunger? Then, one humid afternoon, the air grew thick with a fetid stench, a metallic tang that sent a fresh wave of terror through him. He stumbled upon a clearing. A macabre tableau sprawled before him. The twisted remains of several bodies lay strewn across the forest floor, their flesh picked clean by scavengers. But the most chilling detail was the necklace adorning one of the skeletal figures, a gruesome collection of human teeth, the same kind worn by the cannibal who had attacked his group. Fear, cold and primal, gripped him. He was no longer alone. He pressed on, his steps hesitant, his eyes scanning the dense foliage for any sign of movement. The air hung heavy with the oppressive silence that precedes a storm, the silence broken only by the frantic pounding of his own heart. Suddenly, a guttural shriek pierced the stillness, sending a flock of brightly colored birds exploding from the trees. He whirled around, his hand tightening around the makeshift spear. Through the dense undergrowth, a pair of glowing eyes appeared, reflecting an unnatural red light. A low growl rumbled from the unseen creature, sending shivers down Alex's spine. He remembered Xochitl's chilling tales of the cannibal tribe's mutated eyes, a side effect of the dark magic that fueled their madness. Adrenaline surged through him, erasing the exhaustion that had gnawed at him for weeks. He backed away slowly, the chilling growl growing louder. He stumbled over a gnarled root, falling to his knees and dropping his spear. Desperate, he looked around for a weapon, anything to defend himself. Just then, a hulking figure emerged from the undergrowth, its grotesque form illuminated by the filtering sunlight. It was a cannibal, even more monstrous than the one he'd seen before. Its skin was stretched taut over bone, its skeletal frame barely contained by the tattered remnants of what might have once been clothing. Worst of all were its eyes, glowing red orbs that burned with a feral hunger. A guttural scream tore from the cannibal's throat as it lunged. Alex barely had time to roll to the side, the creature's razor-sharp claws raking the air where his chest had been moments before. A deafening roar echoed through the trees as the cannibal spun around, searching for its prey. Scrambling to his feet, Alex grabbed his spear, the sharpened wood feeling far too flimsy in his hand against this monstrosity. The cannibal spotted him again, and this time it didn't roar. It let out a low, chilling growl, a promise of pain and a twisted amusement. It charged towards him, not with blind fury, but with a calculated ferocity that sent a fresh wave of terror through Alex's veins. He knew then that this wasn't just a mindless beast. This cannibal had hunted before and enjoyed it. Alex thrust his spear forward with all his might, aiming for the center of the creature's chest. The tip found its mark but just barely, and not with the satisfying thud he'd hoped for. It deflected off a crude bone necklace the cannibal wore, adorned with a horrifying collection of human teeth. The creature shrieked in pain, but the wound was barely a scratch. Infuriated, it slammed its massive fist into Alex's spear, shattering the wood near the tip. Alex watched in horror as the makeshift weapon became useless. He was unarmed, prey facing a predator. Panic threatened to consume him, but a primal instinct for survival kicked in. He sidestepped another swipe from the cannibal's claws, the stench of rotting flesh and sweat overwhelming. He darted through the undergrowth, weaving between trees, the cannibal hot on his heels. His lungs burned, his legs screamed in protest, but he couldn't afford to stop. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made him jump, convinced the cannibal was about to pounce. He could hear its ragged breaths close behind him, its heavy footsteps crashing through the undergrowth. Fatigue gnawed at him, his vision blurring at the edges. He stumbled over a hidden root, crashing to the ground face first. For a horrifying moment the world went still. Then he heard a wet, guttural sound and felt a searing pain in his shoulder. He had rolled right into the path of the cannibal, who had sunk its teeth into his flesh. A scream tore from his throat as he scrambled backwards, the metallic tang of blood filling his mouth. He ripped the cannibal's head back, getting it in the eyes with all his might, and pulling himself free. The creature roared in pain, a sound that shook the very trees. Alex scrambled to his feet, his vision swimming with spots. He stumbled forward blindly, the forest a blur of green and brown. He could hear the enraged roar of the cannibal behind him, its heavy footsteps getting closer with each passing moment. He pushed himself to the limit, his lungs burning, his legs screaming in protest. He could taste blood metallic and warm in his mouth, but he couldn't stop. Just when he thought he couldn't run another step, the forest thinned, revealing a sight that made his heart leap in his chest. A vast clearing stretched before him, dominated by a towering monolith of black obsidian, its surface smooth and reflective, almost black in the fading light. This, according to Xochitl's map, was the threshold, the entrance to the Cave of Shadows. His chest heaved as he caught his breath, the sound of the pursuing cannibal dwindling in the distance. Relief washed over him, a wave so powerful it nearly brought him to his knees. He had escaped, for now, but the victory tasted hollow. His shoulder throbbed with a dull ache, the ragged tear in his flesh staining his shirt crimson. He was battered, bruised, defenseless, and alone. Gathering the last dregs of his strength, Alex stumbled towards the obsidian monolith. The air around it felt heavy, charged with an unseen energy. He reached out and traced the smooth, cool surface with his trembling hand. A jolt of energy shot up his arm, sending a ripple across the surface of the monolith. For a moment, the world shimmered and dissolved into a swirling vortex of obsidian and emerald light. When his vision cleared, he found himself standing on a narrow ledge, a vast cavern stretching out before him. The air crackled with a low electrical hum that vibrated deep within his bones. The cavern walls were adorned with crude paintings, figures clawing at the darkness, their faces contorted in eternal screams. These weren't just decorations, they were a graphic depiction of the cave's history, a testament to the horrors that resided within. Suddenly, a guttural roar echoed through the cavern, sending shivers down Alex's spine. He whipped around, his hand instinctively reaching for the useless shard of spear clutched in his grasp. But there was nothing there. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Then, a flicker of movement caught his eye. A shadow detached itself from the darkness, growing larger with each step. It was a humanoid figure, but unlike anything Alex had ever seen. Its skin was a sickly gray, stretched taut over exposed bone. Its eyes glowed with an eerie emerald light, and its long, claw-like fingers scraped against the cavern wall. A putrid stench filled the air, a mix of decay and something far more foul. "Leave," the creature rasped in a voice that sounded like gravel being scraped against stone. "You shouldn't be here." Fear threatened to consume Alex, but the memory of Churchill's words and the gnawing hunger for answers spurred him on. He straightened his back, refusing to show fear. "I need to know," he rasped, his voice raw and hoarse. "What happened to this place? What's the source of the curse?" The creature tilted its head, its eyes gleaming with a malignant curiosity. "The curse," it repeated, its voice echoing in the cavern. "It's more than a curse, little human. It's a power you can't control." "I have to try," Alex said, his voice gaining strength. He looked around the cavern, his eyes scanning the darkness. "Where is it? The source?" A chilling smile stretched across the creature's face, revealing rows of jagged teeth. It gestured deeper into the cavern, its bony finger pointing towards a massive, pulsating sphere of emerald light at the heart of the darkness. "There," it rasped. "But beware, little human. The power within is alluring, but it comes at a terrible cost." With that, the creature turned and melted back into the shadows, leaving Alex alone on the ledge, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. He looked at the pulsating sphere, the source of the curse and the potential answer to his questions. Did he dare venture closer? Could he survive the secrets hidden within the heart of the Cave of Shadows?